This is Mile High.
We have to do it better in order to move people along.
Up, down, inside out.
If you get your mind right,
it is not. It is a receiver of thought. Because love is my first technique.
It's now time for the show.
Welcome, everyone, to the Mile High Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Daniel Knowles. Thank you for joining us with on podcast channels where you can find the Mile High Podcast internationally. Then we'd love to have you actually subscribe so you do not miss a single episode. And also mark your calendar for the Mile High Chiropractic Movement Weekend, which is August 17th to 20th. You can register at www.milehighchiro.org. Registrations are coming in daily. It's very exciting to have our weekend coming up, and that 5 short months till then is going to come around pretty soon. And I'm very excited to bring with you this week on the Mile High Podcast one of my dear friends, and who is also speaking at Mile High, and an incredible chiropractic superstar, Dr. Pam Jarboe. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Pam.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Danny. It's great to be here today.
I would agree. It is great to be here. So thank you for joining us. And you were just coming off your Make Your Impact event in Atlanta, which I heard rave things about. I've heard that it was absolutely stellar. So we'll touch a little bit on that. But first of all, tell people a little bit about how you found your way into the chiropractic world.
Well, I was lucky enough to be looking for a job, and so I stumbled into a chiropractor's office who was looking for help, and I had no clue about chiropractic and very little skills, but I was lucky enough to get hired. Not something I would ever recommend any of my clients do, but it worked out great, and I was really fortunate, and he took me on this journey, where we went to marks and management seminars and technique seminars, and I actually ended up hearing Donald Epstein speak at one of those seminars, and he brought me into Hale House in New York City, and I got to watch these kids who had been abandoned and had AIDS and were born addicted to crack, and he adjusted them, and I watched their transformation, and I just, really wanted to be a part of that. There was so much change in me and in other people I saw. I wanted to be able to bring that to the world.
Wow. And I'm very grateful that they did hire you, even if it was not.
It was not a good move, but thank goodness it happened.
Even though you would not hire yourself now.
Never. Not in a million years.
So, building on that, why do you think, and I know you focus a lot on marketing and branding, so we're going to discuss that. How do people create their message in chiropractic?
That's a great question. That we talked a bit about branding over the weekend because, one of the things that I see in chiropractic is that we love our product. We have this amazing product, and we all have the experience either individually, anecdotally, or in the office where we're seeing transformations happen for people, and it's super exciting. So we love our product. And we talk a lot about delivery systems, like should we do screening, should we do talks, radio shows, podcasts, we're having a lot of conversation about delivery system. But I think we need to have more conversation about how to message whatever it is that we're delivering. So we have to figure out the messaging of our product. And so that was one of the things we focused on at Make Your Impact. We also talked about, soulful selling and different channels of delivery. But one of the most important things, I think, is for us to figure out branding and what is our messaging.
And so what do people do? Give me examples of that in terms of what is our messaging. Go into that a little deeper.
Sure, of course. Well, if I was going back to the seminar that we did this weekend, you want to talk about who are you talking to? Because, I'm not going to have the same message if I wanted to attract mixed martial artists than if I wanted to attract the elderly population or moms with young children. Each one of them has a different need and a different understanding. And so we want to create different messaging. Ultimately, the core of what we offer is the same, but their needs are different. So if we could figure out our brand according to who we're speaking to, that's helpful. But then in a brand, you also want to figure out who are you? How are you different than other chiropractors? How can you create an intuitive feeling? So like maybe creating an archetype, and we go through those exercises, or what are the personality that you want your brand to have? So if you look at Disney or Apple or Nike, all these companies really have a personality and an intuitive feeling right away that you get to know. And that translates down into everything that they do. So like a lot of times I'll ask people, what do you love about Disney? And people, I've asked you this question and you tell me, oh, I love, the experience that everything is handled. I love the story of Walt Disney. It's an amazing story that we both love. And so, but all of that is part of brand, the brand experience that a customer is having. And so Disney technically is about the rides. So technically, our offices are about the adjustment, and that's what we love to focus on. So when we get in front of a client, we might start explaining everything we ever knew about chiropractic and just trying to convince them, but we're not really creating a feeling and an experience and focusing on that, and that's what a brand does. So when you understand that, it trickles down into every procedure and everything that you do, and it's really, really helpful for everybody on the team to understand who you want to be and what you want to represent.
Well, and I want to add something to that, because recently I went to Anthony Robbins' Business Mastery program, and he talked about that significantly in this way, which was that people are so in love with their product or service, and that's where they go wrong. They have to, instead of focusing on how much they love their product and service, which is what you just said, focus on how much they love their clients or their customers.
Exactly.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And if they focus on how much they love their clients and customers, and really can get inside their head and what makes them tick, and why, it's completely different. It's like going out on a date, right? And saying, when you're on that first date, hey, I'm so great, you want to get with this. Like, that
Right.
doesn't really, like, turn on,
Right.
like, the opposite
The other person.
gender. Right,
Right.
exactly.
Even
But
if it's true, which,
even if it, yeah, but if you can, you generally, to focus on them and making them feel like you're putting so much attention, and you want to make them feel special, right? So you have to do that with people when they come in your office and know who you're talking to.
Right. So I'm so glad you said that, because sometimes chiropractors will break down and cry when I teach this model, because they have been so self-focused and so self-conscious. Really, that's what they're just thinking about, themselves and their product and whether or not people are going to like them or need them or choose them. And they're just so self-wound that they're forgetting to think about the other person and what it's like for them to be vulnerable, to need this product, to not know the answers, to want what we have to offer, but we're not packaging it properly. So I think that's a really great point. And actually, one of the things I often say is that my brand Bible that I create in our office, it's my love story. This is one of my babies. I want to be able to present it really well. So crafting your message is writing a love story. It's a way that you're going to like tell people about the most amazing thing you ever found. To me, that's the way it is. That's the way it translates.
Right. Absolutely. So now with that, branding. What are some things that will help chiropractors connect or draw up their brand?
Right. It's a great question. I think like we should start looking at how do people brand. So I mean, I have this process that I take people through, and it's way too complex to like go through all of it. But what I see is that you could just start being curious. Okay, so like one thing is look at archetypes in stories, right? We intuitively, when you watch like a TV series or a movie, you can kind of categorize somebody like, oh, that's the good guy, that's the bad guy, or my kids, when they were little, they'd be trying to figure out, is that a good guy or is that a bad guy? It's like we look for archetypes. We look for who's the hero in this story, who's the villain, who's the magician, who's the ruler, and we're just looking for these archetypes. Well, branders know that people are looking for that also in products. So what's the feel or the story, who are you in the story of all the different, commercial products out there? So you can look at Nike and do a search for Nike images, and you can see how they tell their story about being a hero, that you're the hero actually. And in a way, that is a chiropractic story that we have. It's not about me being amazing and being the person that fixed you and cured you. It's about your body always had that power all along. So in a way, we're making them a hero, and that's kind of an amazing thing. So we can learn from that brand. And I also like to look at an archetype called the innocent brand, which is like a throwback in time, because I often hear people say that about our office, like, wow, like you treat people great, and you do a house call. Nobody does that anymore, and right? And it's like, well, you make healthcare human, which it isn't right now, where people are treated like a commodity and a number, and there's long lines and waiting forever and no answers. And so in a lot of ways, we're taking people back into a time when things made a little bit more sense and there was just common sense about health. So that's an innocent brand, like Coca-Cola is an innocent brand. So we could just start looking at how do really successful brands communicate, and just look at what their messaging is and be curious about that. Think about, what do you want people to feel?
And and as I listen to that, part of that is you have to get out of being in survival as a practitioner. Because if you're in
Yes.
survival as a practitioner, which,
Yes.
look, the reality is people come out of school owing a lot of money, you got to run a
Yes.
business, and
Yes.
but if you're in that place, then you're just, I got to get somebody in the door. But you
Right.
have to shift that gear into let's get some higher thinking
Yes.
about our business and our customer, and take some quiet time to really reflect on that and draw that up,
Right.
which is a different part of reaching the public, right?
Yeah.
And you're talking about branding. I know you call it creating your brand Bible, which I love. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a great term.
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit more about, if people were to start like creating a brand Bible, what would that mean? Are there a couple steps to that or something?
Right. Okay. Well, you're making some great points. First of all, I think there was 7 students at the Make Your Impact seminar, and what they learned was that there's so much they could do now. And there was a guy who was a year out, and he said, "Oh, I wish I had known this a year ago," because there's so much that you can do early on when you think about it. So if you think about, like, what do you want people to feel when they come to you? That might be a place to start. That's called brand emotions, identifying those. What makes you different than any other chiropractor in that town? What makes you different than a physical therapist or a yoga studio or the orthopedic surgeon that people will go to? It's important that you really look at what makes you different and run that by other people. That part, when we got to that part in the workshop, I saw like it made people really emotional because, we're so enthusiastic. We're kind of like Tommy Boy spastic, we're like so excited about our product that we don't have controlled passion. And so if we can really take our passion for that, make it controlled, and speak specifically about what makes us different, that'll be really helpful when we present to other people. And to really think about, like, who do you really want to help? And how does your product answer their deepest concerns and their worries? And how does it meet what they secretly want? And really, like, break that down and drill it down very specifically. These things are all pieces of how you create your brand.
And people unfortunately don't even think about that.
No, they're just thinking about what they love, and we're just so excited. So I mentioned the movie Tommy Boy, which you and I have talked about how much we like that movie. But
Right.
it's a great learning movie. It's like the dumbest movie. I remember watching it the first time with my son, like, what is happening here? Like, why am I in this? And now I refer back to it often to teach people, because he's just so spastic and he's so desperate. That's the other thing you talk about. Think about, like you were mentioning, dating. Like, we're never really successful when we're desperate to date. People don't want that. Like, how do we shift into a different state? One
Right.
of the slides you shared from Business Mastery, and I've heard Tony Robbins talk about this before, is the formula, but state is first, strategy is second. We're
Right.
really focused on strategy and action, but we're not really thinking about what state are we coming from? How would we perform in our marketing and our sales if we knew that that person was going to say yes, and that everybody wants what you have to offer? And a lot of days I would be thinking that, like, everybody wants what I have to offer. They just don't know it yet.
Right. And also, what state are you in when you're drawing up your business plans? Because
Yeah.
the state that you're making decisions from makes a big impact,
Yes.
for
Right.
so many things in your life. And so often we make decisions from a less than resourceful state,
I
right?
agree.
And that plays out, all these things play out in such ramifications. So,
Yeah.
and that also brings me to another topic that I know you like talking about, which is stages of practice. So
Yes.
let's talk about stages of practice and how that will link to some of this and what's essential there.
Okay, so if you imagine it like a pyramid, the bottom stage is when you're in ramp up. You're ramping up your practice. Actually, the very bottom stage is dream up. So I talk to the students, I'm like, you're in dream up phase. You have to dream about what this is going to be like. And there's a lot of, strategies that you have to do there where you're like, you can do a lot of work to create your dream about what the practice would be like. Then there's ramp up. And ramp up is basically you have to get great at marketing and sales. That's any business. It's not just chiropractic. We're not immune to that. I feel like we want to be immune. We sometimes, I see chiropractors want to kind of magically go over that. Like, well, I don't really have to market and sell because what I have is so awesome. People are just going to come. And I thought that when I first graduated. I really wanted out of the marketing and sales part of this because I was a heart-centered chiropractor. I just wanted to help people.
Experience? Or I don't know if this was just me, but did you have that experience where you like your first month or something or week and you told a few people about subluxation and innate intelligence and how amazing it was, and like
Right?
you just thought just by telling them about innate intelligence subluxation they were going to get it because you were just so on fire and they
Right.
would come to you forever. Did you have the experience of that not work?
Here, my sarcasm font is going to come into overdrive now. I had to wear dark glasses and a trench coat and a hat because, like, the paparazzi were all over me because I said subluxation, adjustment, and all of a sudden it was like, woo! Everybody was all over me. It did not happen that way.
Oh,
It
okay.
should have.
It wasn't just me. Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. It should have. It should have, but that I think is our like magical thinking kind of thing. Like we just wish that, everybody would have this. I think we lead with our heart. We don't lead with a commitment to business. But anyway, so ramp up stage is marketing and sales, but some of the clients that I see, they're 30 years in and they're still in ramp up. They're
Right.
kind of going through these cycles of like, oh my God, like where'd everybody go? We need to get new patients. And it's just like an adrenaline based thing. There's no automation. There's no predictability. There's no profit planning. It's just panic. And that's not a great place after many decades to be in. And really, it's very preventable. So anyway, so then there is that stage is the ramp up stage. And then there is scale up, which you might need to like figure out, how do I manage a team, how do I create systems, kind of that. You're at that. And then there's leader up, where you're really coming out now into the community or into the profession, and you have to learn leadership skills to broaden your scope or your reach. And so, but what I see, we get stuck in ramp up. And sometimes you might go all the way up to leader up, but crash because you didn't have the right systems. If you jump over something and then the practice collapses and you're like, how did I get back into ramp up mode? Why do I need to do this? And you have all this emotion about where you're at. But the truth is, it's just this is the levels, and you just need to figure out how to work them in order to create a sustainable, effortless, or not as much effortful practice.
Well, and I want to ask you these recommendations, what recommendations you'd make in this area, and then I also want to share my 2 cents on it too, which is this. But I'm going to ask you this. I know if someone is in practice for decades, 10, 20, 30 years, and they need to make a shift in this area, the answer for them is going to be the same as the answer for someone who's in school that's a student or just starting, which is like, what do you recommend if people are going to go into practice? Because I've seen this so often, and it's heartbreaking. I know it's heartbreaking for you too. Someone who's so skilled, like as an adjuster, and they like are phenomenal, and they're just not making it, and they can't make money, and they can't make ends meet, and they thought just like if they had magic hands, things would would be like the paparazzi, right? And that's not happening. How could you, as a student or someone just starting out, shift? What are the things you need to focus on so that you can get that in the right direction?
I love that question for many reasons. I mean, first of all, I know people like that. People who changed my, physiology with their incredible expertise at adjusting, but really didn't make it in practice. And I know some people that went over to decompression or, other things out of survival. And that does break my heart because I really believe that we have one of the most powerful transformational tools in our hands. We have the most powerful healthcare product in our hands, but we don't take ourselves as business people seriously. And I'll get to what I would recommend in a second.
Yeah.
But I think that's the first thing, is that we have to make a commitment. Like I kind of had that, Don Quixote kind of, thing about like, I'm going to change the world. And, and then I was like, coo, coo, the world was slapping me. And I really had to grow up and learn how to live in the world. In a way, as chiropractors, sometimes we live in a bubble. We do. And it's wonderful. It's an incredible bubble. But we have to figure out how to live in the world. So the students who are in the Make Your Impact group, I made recommendations, first of all, that they just start learning about the stuff we're talking about right now. What the social media person said, start building your social media profile now, because you can have thousands of fans before you graduate, and you can just edit your page to have your new address and your new doctor name. But at least now you've already created a fan base, so that when you go into your community, people are impressed by the numbers that are behind you. So that's something. And then I recommend that they go to flea markets and garage sales and start learning to bargain about money, because people are really uncomfortable with that thing, I see anyway. I did have a lot of women in the group, but I was like, you guys have to figure out how to do this. You have to start bargaining about everything. I do it with my kids. And now my kids are so good at it. Like even my son, when he was about 10, I'd be like, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking you're going to do the laundry, wash the dishes, and cook dinner for us tonight. He's like, I'm coming in at cook dinner. I'm like, unacceptable. Cook dinner and do the laundry. I mean, we would bargain about everything, because I wanted him to get that skill that I never had. And so I recommend that people start this. It's in the 4-Hour Work Week. Tim Ferriss says this, like, you got to start to learn this skill of being able to have a confrontational tolerance about money. And so I think that's really important, because no matter how much you market, if you cannot recommend a care plan to somebody and ask for money, none of it will work. You will just keep marketing and marketing and marketing and marketing. So I think we also need to get really skillful at learning those techniques. And there are techniques to handle it, so you don't have to be so freaked out by all the feelings that are happening. So
Right. And so, and I'm going to add, as I said, my 2 cents, because I see this working with training doctors, teaching programs, and people will fault the chiropractic education, right, because they didn't learn business in chiropractic school. And wake up, it's not going to change. You're not going to get more business in chiropractic school, right? The CC has certain standards. There's education is already so many dollars. So if you're in school and you're listening to this, right?
Yes.
Start learning about business now. Like that, make that your homework assignment. Go learn technique, right? Go to whatever technique seminars are appropriate for you. But your homework is to learn business and read books, right? And do all of that. Correct?
Yeah, can I add something? Because I think,
of course.
just to give specific tools, because how do I learn about business?
Right, yeah.
If you go to YouTube, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy has great videos about learning to sell. So there are teachers there, and you can follow those teachers, but those are some great places to start.
Right, in audiobooks, right? You get audiobooks, get Audible, and listen to you've got a whole university on business that you can access for very low fees from experts, right? So you can pick up books on marketing and do them by audio and things, and study that stuff now. Now, if you're a chiropractor, right? So students, because we get a lot of chiropractors listening to this. So if you're a chiropractor in practice, do the same thing. Like, you've got to start studying business and pick up a top, some top 5 business books and make those what you study. In addition to reading green books and other things, not to minimize that, but you have to be, if you're going to thrive, then you need to do that.
A book I would recommend is Selling the Invisible.
Yes. I actually just read that about a month ago for the 3rd time.
Yeah, it's a good book. I pick it up regularly because I teach a course about this process, the new patient experience. I pick it up regularly. Every time I'm like, oh, how did I miss that last time? It's really a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah, and I read that back in chiropractic school. I've got highlights over years on that. So, and I would recommend people read the 4-Hour Work Week, right?
Yeah.
Don't kid yourself and think you're going to be a 4-hour work week chiropractor, but there's skills and strategies in there to automation and managing your time that are vital.
In business circles, I'm in business circles with people who are in business circles with Tim Ferriss, and he's like, there is no 4-hour work week. Tim Ferriss worked 100 hours a week in order to create the 4-hour work week phenomenon. But he has times in his life where he has a 4-hour work week. But there's just a lot of good stuff in that book. It's interesting.
And it's branding. He branded it to reach a certain audience to make sales, because he knew who his audience was that was going to reach to buy it.
Right. It's
right?
smart.
And that in of itself, it's a lesson. Or his book, Tools for Titans,
Yes.
is also, good
So good.
strategies, right? And you can go on. So, and actually, what we'll do is we'll put some of these books in the podcast blog post that goes along with this. Now, how can people find out more about you and reach you more, Pam?
Well, I have a free course. If anybody wants to get it, you don't even have to opt in for it. It's at chirobloom.com/trust. And that course teaches people about what we're up against basically in marketing. So if I was selling shoes, I might have a little bit easier of a time because I don't have anti-cultural authority, and then I also don't have negative brand equity. So it makes it a little bit easier to sell other products. So I kind of lay that out and teach you what high-end marketers do in order to build more trust.
Excellent.
So I would recommend that. And if anybody would like to come to a private Facebook group that I have, if they want to learn more about these kind of topics, it's a free group and it's called Make Your Impact. So you can definitely join up there. And those are some of the resources in addition to what I already mentioned.
Excellent. And let's do a little tidbit. Since you're going to be coming out to Mile High, August 17th to 20th. By the way, if you did not get those groups and URLs, like don't have a car accident if you're listening to this, like writing it down, it will be in the podcast notes, right? And also you can share the podcast episode with others. So do that once it's live, certainly. So since you're going to be speaking at Mile High, can you share something about what you're going to be sharing?
I forget what my topic is. What I like to share about is like certainty in communication. I really like to talk about communication and certainty, like citing research and examples of what we're up against inside ourselves in order to help other people to get chiropractic. That's a commitment of mine, so I know I'm going to be hitting that.
I know you will too. So thank you everybody for joining us on the Mile High podcast. And remember to continue to follow us by being a subscriber on iTunes. You can find these podcasts on iTunes, on YouTube, on Stitcher, and on Facebook, both on audio and video formats, depending on what your flavor is. So whatever way you want to get your Mile High, you can get it that way. So, and Pam, is there any other last message or points that you would like to share?
What I want to say is thank you to the people who listen to this, because I really appreciate chiropractors who care to do it better and who are always improving their product and their thing that they're presenting to the public, because we have this tremendous gift to bring to humanity. We make a difference in the human experience. And so I just want to say thank you for your efforts.
And Dr. Pam, thank you for making a difference in the human experience for both chiropractic practice members all around the world, as well as chiropractors all around the world. So thank you very much. And again, join us August 17th to 20th in Colorado. And you can subscribe to this podcast and register for the program at www.milehighchiro.org. Everybody, keep changing spines and lives and minds for the better. Like our page on Facebook, www.facebook.com/Mile High Chiro.